Judge Williams Alexander, a man whose name had been on the bench for over 30 years, sat in the middle of the courtroom. At 65, his face bore the weight of decades of cases, some of them complicated, some routine, but all demanding the same level of professionalism. He was a man who was known for his unflinching decisions and his quick, yet brutal dismissals of anyone who dared challenge his authority. To most, he was simply the judge, a man who had seen it all. To his colleagues, he was respected, perhaps feared, for his steadfast belief in the rule of law above all else. Stay with us to see what unfolds next. Judge Alexander straightens his black robe and taps his gavel, signaling the start of the court session. Order in the court! The noise dies down as everyone sits in rapt attention. The case before the judge today is simple, or so it seems. The defendant, an 18-year-old girl named Johnson Isabella, is accused of a crime she claims she didn't commit. The case is clear-cut in the prosecution's eyes. Isabella is the classic example of a troubled youth from a broken home and with a history of minor offenses. But today, something doesn't feel right to her, and she's determined to stand her ground. Johnson Isabella, despite her young age, carried the weight of a lifetime on her shoulders. At 18, she had already lived through more than most people did in a lifetime. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, Isabella had seen things no child should. Her father had walked out when she was just a baby, and her mother, who worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, was often absent. Isabella had raised herself for the most part, learning quickly how to survive on her own. But beyond that hardened exterior, Isabella was different. She was smart, with a keen intellect and a fierce sense of justice that burned deep inside her. She stands at the defendant's table, her eyes steady, her posture rigid. She's dressed in a black suit, a far cry from the designer clothes and well-tailored suits that normally occupy the courtroom. There is no family in the stands for support, only a public defender who seems more interested in their lunch break than the case at hand. Judge Alexander looks over the file in front of him, clearly unimpressed with the case. He scans the paperwork quickly before looking at the young girl standing in front of him. Isabella doesn't flinch, but the faintest hint of doubt is visible in her eyes. So, Johnson Isabella, you're here today, sitting at the defendant's table, accused of theft. You know, your record isn't exactly spotless. You've been in trouble before. I'm sure you've heard this lecture 100 times. You're just another statistic, aren't you? Isabella doesn't blink. Her hands are folded in front of her, but there's a quiet strength emanating from her. I'm not here to be a statistic, Your Honor. I'm here to prove I'm innocent. The room falls silent. Judge Alexander chuckles lightly, clearly underestimating her. Prove your innocence, you say? Do you even understand what that means? This is a court of law, young lady, not a playground for someone like you to make claims you can't back up. The prosecutor, a tall man named Richard Graham, stands up. His voice is sharp, almost sneering. Your Honor, as the records clearly show, this is the 4th time Isabella has been involved in a crime of this nature. She's been arrested for theft before, and this time she's been caught red-handed. She may be a kid, but she knows how to break the law. Isabella's eyes narrow at the prosecutor's words, but she keeps her composure. I didn't steal anything, and I'll prove it. Judge Alexander raises an eyebrow, obviously enjoying this. He looks at the prosecutor and nods in agreement. It's cute, isn't it? When people try to act like they can outsmart the system, but in this court, I make the rules. And right now, I'm seeing a young woman who thinks she can talk her way out of a hole she dug for herself. But you're not fooling anyone. Judge Alexander's voice is heavy with judgment, and his gaze stays fixed on Isabella. But what he doesn't know is that this isn't just any teenager standing in front of him. This is a young woman with a razor-sharp mind, a relentless determination to fight for what's right, and a secret that she's about to reveal. The day drags on with Isabella defending herself against question after question, each one more dismissive than the last. At one point, the prosecutor brings up a supposed eyewitness, but Isabella quickly points out the inconsistency in their testimony. She does it calmly, citing the exact time of the alleged crime and offering evidence that suggests the supposed witness couldn't have seen what they claimed. Judge Alexander scoffs, but then grows quiet. His eyes flick over to Isabella, a flicker of doubt crossing his face for the first time. You think you can just present a few facts and change the course of this trial? This is a courtroom, not a debate club. I've heard enough of your facts. But Isabella doesn't give up. Instead, she stands tall, holding her ground. I may be young, Your Honor, but I know the law, and I know that the truth matters. I'm not here to play by your rules. I'm here to make sure that justice is served, even if it means going against everything you believe. The tension in the room thickens as Judge Alexander glares at her. But then something shifts. Something in Isabella's demeanor, the quiet certainty in her voice, begins to crack the foundation of his arrogance. What? What do you mean? Are you suggesting that you've read the law? I've studied it. For years. The courtroom goes silent. Judge Alexander stands, his face a mixture of disbelief and admiration. He looks at the files again, his hands shaking slightly as he sees that Isabella's claims are, in fact, legitimate. She has presented case law and legal precedents that prove her innocence. She has done what no one expected of her. She has shown him that she is more than just a misunderstood teenager. Well, it seems I've made a grave mistake. You're not just some misguided youth. You're something else. The room is stunned. Even the prosecutor is speechless. After a long pause, Judge Alexander finally speaks again, this time with genuine respect in his voice. Johnson Isabella, your case is dismissed. The courtroom erupts in shock. Isabella's eyes flicker with both relief and defiance, but she doesn't smile. She just nods once, her gaze still steady. She's won, not just the case, but the respect of everyone who thought she was nothing more than a girl with a broken past. As Isabella walks out of the courtroom, she pauses and looks back one last time at Judge Alexander. There's no bitterness in her eyes, just the quiet satisfaction of someone who's fought and won. But there's also something more, a quiet promise that this isn't the end. For Isabella, this victory wasn't just about proving her innocence. It was about something deeper. It was about showing the world that no one, no matter their age, no matter their circumstances, should ever be underestimated. And now, with her future wide open before her, the world would have to reckon with Johnson Isabella. The sun is setting as Isabella walks out of the courthouse, the weight of the victory still settling in her chest. She takes a deep breath, feeling the cool evening air rush into her lungs. For the first time in a long while, Isabella feels a sense of relief. Her footsteps echo in the quiet street as she walks away from the building that once represented everything she was fighting against. Now it feels like a place she's conquered, a place she's taken back from the people who would have seen her fall. Isabella had done what everyone had said was impossible. She had stood in a courtroom, alone, and fought for what was right. She'd proven that sometimes the most underestimated people have the greatest power. But in truth, Isabella wasn't done. This was only the beginning. She wasn't just a girl trying to clear her name. She was now a force to be reckoned with, a force that would shake the very system that had almost swallowed her whole. Isabella's phone buzzes in her pocket. She pulls it out, her face lighting up as she sees a text message from her best friend Kayla. Yo, Isabella! You did it! I heard what happened. You're a legend now. Dinner tonight to celebrate? Isabella smiles softly at the message, but her smile fades quickly as she thinks about the road ahead. She taps out a quick reply. Thanks, Kay. I appreciate it. Let's talk later. Gotta think about next steps. She puts the phone back in her pocket and keeps walking, her mind racing. Isabella arrives at a small coffee shop down the street from the courthouse. She steps inside, greeted by the familiar hum of conversation and the smell of freshly brewed coffee. The shop is cozy, a far cry from the cold, sterile environment of the courtroom. She orders a latte and finds a quiet corner to sit by the window, watching the city's traffic rush by. Despite the victory, Isabella knew there was more to the story. That courtroom, the legal system, it wasn't something that could just be conquered in one day. She had exposed cracks, yes, but she knew better than anyone that real change takes time, and she wasn't done. Not by a long shot, but today was hers to savor. After all, it was rare that people like her got to have moments like this, moments when they proved the world wrong. As Isabella stirs her latte absent-mindedly, she hears a voice from behind her. Mind if I join you? Isabella turns, surprised to see Judge Williams Alexander standing there, his dark suit reflecting the fading sunlight through the window. His face is no longer the stern, mocking figure she had encountered in the courtroom, but one of quiet reflection. He looks almost humble. Judge Alexander, what are you doing here? He hesitates, clearly not used to being the one caught off guard. He takes a deep breath and pulls out the chair across from her, sitting down slowly. I've been following your case, Isabella. I have to admit, I didn't expect the outcome. At least not like this. I've been thinking about it ever since. You caught me off guard in that courtroom, and I owe you an apology. Isabella's eyebrows furrow in confusion. She hadn't expected this. Judge Alexander was known for his unyielding demeanor in court, his confidence, his rigid sense of right and wrong. Yet here he was, offering her an apology. Why would you apologize? You were just doing your job. Maybe, but I was wrong about you. I judged you based on what I saw on paper, not who you really were. I thought you were just another teenager trying to take advantage of the system. But when I saw you in action, it became clear. You were the one who understood the system better than anyone else. You weren't just fighting for yourself. You were fighting for something bigger, and I respect that. Isabella's silent for a moment, processing his words. She wasn't used to hearing this kind of respect from someone like him. In fact, she wasn't sure how to respond. Thank you, but I didn't do it for you or for anyone else. I did it for me and for the people who are out there every day being told they don't matter. I didn't want to be one of those people anymore. Judge Alexander nods, his eyes softening. He looks at her, really looks at her, and for the first time there's no judgment in his eyes, just understanding. I think you're going to change things, Isabella. The way you think, the way you approach the law, it's rare. People like you don't come around often. Isabella looks out the window for a moment, as if lost in thought. Then she turns back to him. I'm not done yet. This was just one battle. There are more to come. Isabella leaves the coffee shop with a new sense of clarity. She knows that her journey is far from over. The system that had almost crushed her still stands, and there are others out there just like her. People who need a voice, people who have been forgotten by the same courts and institutions that have always protected the powerful. Her phone buzzes again, this time with an unknown number. She answers, her curiosity piqued. Hello, is this Johnson Isabella, the girl who exposed the truth in the courthouse? Yes, who's asking? My name is Raymond Carter. I'm with the National Legal Defense Fund. We've been following your case, and we think you could help us with something much bigger. It's time for a real fight. We need someone with your skills. Are you in? Isabella's heart races. She hadn't expected this, hadn't expected someone from a national organization to reach out to her. But the weight of what he said isn't lost on her. This is the opportunity she'd been waiting for. This is where the real change can begin. As Isabella steps into the bright lights of a new world, one where the stakes are even higher and the consequences even more significant, she understands that her fight is just beginning. But this time she's not alone. She has allies now, people who believe in her ability to make a difference. And together they will stand against the system that seeks to silence those who speak the truth. Johnson Isabella had faced a choice. Let the world tell her who she was or define herself on her own terms. She had chosen the latter, and now she was stepping into a larger battle, a battle where every victory would be hard won, but every failure would bring her one step closer to the justice she knew the world needed. Isabella walks out of the coffee shop, the sound of her footsteps strong and confident. The future is uncertain, but in her heart, she knows one thing for sure. She's not done yet. Isabella sits in her new office, a small, modest space furnished with just the essentials. Papers are scattered across her desk, filled with case files and legal books she's been devouring for weeks. Her phone buzzes and she looks at the screen to see a text from Kayla. How's the new gig? You're doing big things, girl. Isabella smiles, but the smile quickly fades as she thinks about the weight of the work ahead of her. She isn't just helping people now. She's taking on a system built to keep people like her in the shadows. But she's not afraid anymore. She knows what she has to do. As she picks up a file, her phone rings. It's Raymond Carter from the National Legal Defense Fund. Isabella, we need you to look at something. There's a case we've been tracking, a wrongful conviction, and we think you're the right person to help us bring this to light, but it won't be easy. Isabella sets the file down and listens intently. This is it, the challenge she's been preparing for. Over the next few weeks, Isabella worked tirelessly with Raymond and the National Legal Defense Fund. She meets with attorneys, examines legal documents, and even goes undercover in some of the areas she's fighting for, gathering information about the injustice people face on a daily basis. The battle is grueling, but Isabella's resolve is stronger than ever. Isabella had always believed that one person could make a difference, but she never realized just how much of a difference she could make when she combined her voice with others who shared her passion for justice. She wasn't just a teenager anymore. She was a force, a voice for those who had been silenced by the weight of the system. Months later, after an exhausting investigation and legal battle, Isabella finally stands in court again. This time, she's not alone. She's surrounded by a team of experienced lawyers, journalists, and activists who have worked with her every step of the way. The judge, a different one this time, looks at the case with a newfound respect. But Isabella knows there's still a long way to go. Your Honor, we've gathered the facts, we've spoken to the witnesses, and the truth is undeniable. What happened here was a miscarriage of justice, and it's time for that truth to be heard. The courtroom is silent as she speaks. The evidence is clear. The wrongful conviction is overturned. The defendant is freed. After the case is won, Isabella stands outside the courthouse. The crowd that had gathered around her cheers. But Isabella is quiet. She's not looking for applause. She's looking at the bigger picture. This is just the beginning. The fight is far from over, but the momentum is on their side now. Raymond approaches her, offering a handshake. You did it, Isabella. You really did it. We did it, but we're not stopping here. Isabella looks out at the horizon, knowing that the road ahead is long and full of obstacles. But she's not afraid anymore. She's ready to keep fighting. For herself, for the innocent, and for anyone who's ever felt like they didn't have a voice. Isabella had set out on a journey to prove that one voice could change the world, and in the end, that voice became a rallying cry for countless others. The truth, once silenced, was now loud and clear for everyone to hear. The camera focuses on Isabella as she walks away from the courthouse, her stride purposeful and determined. The sun is setting, casting a warm glow over the city. She knows that this fight is far from over, but it's a fight worth having. She's ready for whatever comes next. This story is a reminder to all of us that it doesn't matter where you come from, what you've been through, or how young you are. What matters is your will to stand up, speak out, and fight for what's right. The world is full of obstacles, but it's also full of people who can tear those obstacles down. And all it takes is one person to start the revolution. Isabella did it, and so can you. Sometimes the world will try to define you by your past or your circumstances, but your past doesn't dictate your future. The truth is more powerful than any obstacle you'll ever face, and your voice is the tool that can bring about the change you want to see. Isabella proved that one person can make a difference, but only when they refuse to stay silent and choose to fight for justice, no matter the cost. You have the power to change the world. Stand up, speak out, fight for what's right. If you've been inspired by this story and want to hear more stories of real change, real courage, and real people who fought against the odds, click the subscribe button. Join us for more powerful stories like this. And remember, your voice matters. Your story matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Subscribe now and never miss a story that will move you.